So I have an idea. We should bring in the heavy hitter. We should bring in the guy who helped break this trade. It's Elliotte Friedman. Fried, thanks so much for doing this. Question number one: can you break this down for us, please?
Sure, no problem, Kevin. I think what this is I think during the week we had heard that Toronto was looking to bolster their forwards. If you take a look at, they obviously have a ton of scoring, they have a ton of talent, but their fourth line has kind of been a mishmash all year. Players in, players out, trying new groups, and it really wasn't working. There wasn't anything consistent. And I think what the Maple Leafs were doing was either looking to add some more consistent fourth line forwards or add some forwards up in the depth chart that might push some guys down. And they've kind of accomplished both with this trade, actually. They bring in Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari, two guys who are centers, two guys who have a lot of a playoff experience, two guys who have a bit of an edge, and two guys who will strengthen their forward unit. And, O'Reilly, I think they've had their eye on him for a bit. Acciari, I think they've also had their eye on him for a bit, and they're able to get him in the same deal. And what I think happens here, if you take a look at it, the Leafs are only paying 25% of O'Reilly's salary. St. Louis is doing half, Minnesota is doing a quarter, and I think this still gives Toronto some flexibility to potentially do some other things. They don't have as much capital. I will say this, though. The one thing Toronto did in this deal was they didn't trade their best prospects. Yes, they traded a first-round pick, but their best prospects weren't touched. And so I'm curious to see, do they do anything else, or do they stick with what they've done?
So do you think that they'll do more after this deal? I mean, we still have a couple of weeks before that March 3rd deadline, and they do have cap space, or is that an issue now?
Well, it's tighter, Martine, but the fact that Minnesota and St. Louis combined to take 75% of O'Reilly's salary really helps them. I think it still does give them the option to do some other things if they want to. And as someone who has to work 2 weeks today, Martine, I'm really hoping that all the trades aren't done well in advance. I think the key is that I think Kyle Dubas wanted to address his forwards first. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk, does he need to add another defenseman or not? I think he decided, look, worst comes to worst, I've got 8 defensemen I can pick from. Now, he didn't think he was as deep in the forwards. He's done, I think, his biggest shopping there. Now we'll see if he decides I've got to do and address anything else.
Yeah, so this was huge because Kyle Dubas retains Matthew Knies. He was very rumored to be moving, as he would have been the big piece for any big trade. All of a sudden, we see a big trade. It sounded like Dubas was hesitant to get rid of a first-round pick, with no guarantee that a UFA wouldn't stay in Toronto after that. Do you see anything in the future of Ryan O'Reilly or Noel Acciari staying despite their UFA status at the end of the season, or is it too soon to ask?
Well, I know, you know what? First of all, Kevin, it's never too soon to ask. That's what we're here for. If we don't know the answer, we just make it up. So, I think the way it goes for Toronto is this. The results will speak. And how this goes through the playoffs, who plays well, who doesn't, I think all decisions are going to be made after the season. I don't think the Maple Leafs are really capable of making a lot of long-term decisions right now, especially until they know what Matthews' next contract is going to look like. But I think what they have had the option is of time. They can see who performs well, who doesn't, and make their decisions after the season based on that. So I wouldn't say today that Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari can't be Leafs next year. I wouldn't want to put a percentage on it, but if those guys play well and there's a path for them to stay, they could stay. The whole thing about Dubas saying, I don't want to trade my first-round pick for a rental, I don't want to trade my top prospects for a rental. He did that with his prospects. He obviously didn't do that with his first-rounder. I look at it this way, though. It's easy to say, but sometimes you take a look and you see what you can get, and you see what your matchup is, and Tampa is a deep, deep, tough team. They're likely first-round opponent, very likely first-round opponent. It's like my grandmother's old line, you plan, God laughs. Sometimes you have to do things that you're not always hoping to do. But I look at this trade, I think it's what they need. You win the Stanley Cup down the middle, on defense, and in goal. By adding O'Reilly and Acciari, the Maple Leafs are much better down the middle, and they'll have guys who play center now potentially on the wings. And I think that's important to win the Stanley Cup and in the playoffs.
And also with somebody like with this trade, you've got a guy that's won the Conn Smythe as a proven champion. What will that bring to the room, in your opinion, a guy like Ryan O'Reilly?
Well, he's a winner, and he's won. He's won on the biggest stage, and he was the MVP of the playoffs. Like to me, you know, he walks in the door, and he's got instant credibility. You know, everybody knows how good he is. Chari, you know, the Leaf players, they saw Chari face to face in some of those playoff series. They know exactly what they're dealing with. I think those guys are going to walk in, and they're going to have credibility. And this isn't going to be about, you know, who needs to play or anything like that. It's going to be about fitting roles and making sure this works. I don't think there's going to be a problem with that at all, Martine.
Okay, so you just have one less trade to break now in 2 weeks. Sorry about that. Do you anticipate before you're on air in 2 weeks for approximately 12 hours, are we going to see more moves before that, or you anticipate a lot of deadline moves?
Well, you know what, Kevin? I think the fact that we've already seen Bo Horvat go. We've already seen this trade. We saw Tarasenko get traded. I think these teams are sending a message. They want to get going early. That's bad for me, but it's good for overall entertainment. So I support it. Whatever makes the fans happy, I support.
Bring your tap dance shoes on March the 3rd.
Elliotte Friedman he's always bringing it every single time we chat with him. Fried, thanks so much for this. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, next time let me sleep. Like, don't break these trades at 11 o'clock at night. I'd really appreciate that.
We had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, unfortunately. Although I did immediately say, let's get Fried. He's got to be up right now, right?
No problem. No problem.